This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.
Well, let's talk about our number 10 then, Emile Smith-Rowe. A lot of doubts over his future as it stands. Is he going to leave Arsenal? Is he going to stay? And if he is staying at Arsenal, where does he have a place in his first team? Is it as a number 8, as a wide forward, left or right? Let's talk about Emile Smith-Rowe. We'll go to Alex first. What do you think is next for Emile Smith-Rowe? Has he got a future long-term at the Emirates Stadium?
Anyone watching this or listening to this, go back and watch that performance. There's a video on Arsenal's YouTube channel of every touch of him against Chelsea. Emile Smith-Rowe has lost confidence in his body. I can't put it any more simply than that, in my opinion. In that performance on Boxing Day, he's up and against it. He's in and around Kante. He's pushing him out the way. He wants the duel. He wants to go past people. Now, I can tell, doesn't want the duel. I can tell I just don't think he backs his body physically to do that at the moment. Now, that's a confidence thing. That's a development thing. That's something, as someone who's had, growth issues, that's a difficult thing, especially for the last 4 years. It's something psychologically that's playing on his mind. Imagine how long he's been dealing with that. That's always in the back of his head. So that's my diagnosis of the issue. And then I look at the coach and I look at a very famous clip, when I lose a duel. It's one of the big things for him. I can't imagine Mikel is going to allow someone to not be at it physically. And if you look at the midfielders that we're targeting, we are looking at dual machines. And you look at the quote that George spoke about earlier as well. So I think that's basically the thing. I don't think Mikel has a problem with Smith-Rowe as a player. I don't think he has a problem with him as a person. I know there's rumours about stuff off the pitch. I'm not going to talk about that. I don't think it's fair because we don't know. All I can see is on the pitch. I'm watching him against Bournemouth. He doesn't want to take his man on. He doesn't want to get in, he doesn't want to get up and at him, and there's a physicality issue there. And then we start to look at the profile of the player, and I like it because there's a ball carrier, there's a combiner. He takes the shot on early, which a lot of our players don't do. I think only really Martinelli tries to take the shot on early, so I think we need to replace that. He is a unique profile. But then I think if we're looking at balance of midfield, and this is why I wouldn't be up for Maddison either. Once you start to, I believe a midfield should be comprised of 3 players who have pretty good base level. They're all base very good at passing, all base very good at taking the ball and certain things, and then should have a few skill sets that they exceed at, they excel at. If you have someone like a KDB, you might think, he's elite in all phases. You might be able to be like, okay, because of Kevin De Bruyne, let's say he wasn't elite in other phases, because he's so good in the final third, we might be able to have more of a knock-on in another midfielder who sort of covers and does the dirty work for him. Once you start to adapt, it just throws everything off. I think you need a balance in the midfield. And Smith-Rowe, for me, there's too much adaptation we have to do when he's in the midfield. I don't think he offers enough intensity. I don't think he offers enough aggression. We then start adapting, and you're back to square one. So, lovely player, but I just think he needs to go somewhere else.
What do you think, George? I know you're a big fan of ESR. Once upon a time, you said he was better than Kai Havertz, and to be fair, I think that's hard nowadays. But do you think Smith-Rowe can revive his Arsenal career? Is there a remontada loading?
Are we talking about footballing issues, or are we talking about mental issues? That's where I think that we need to draw a drawback, because I think we as Arsenal fans tend to do this thing where if somebody is injured, we then try to hyperbole their criticism and start to say that they were. Do people not recognize that Emile Smith-Rowe was one of the leading factors in terms of bringing us out of the mud, so to speak, quotes and end quotes? And when you talk about it, it wasn't because this guy had a purple patch. It wasn't because, he didn't offer himself in terms of availability. He was available for quite a long time, and he actually led the season for 8 months as our leading top goal scorer. When you've got a talent, right, that is U23, and he offers himself with that kind of combination of both dribbling, tight space control. Is there a better dribbler in the Arsenal squad than Emile Smith-Rowe right now? On the run, is there somebody that's better? I would argue maybe Reece Nelson is potentially somebody that could have, a flag in that point, but not really. And then when you combine that with the ball striking off both feet, and then you combine that with the ability to provide that overlap, and you're asking me, George, do you want to spend 65 or 60 million pounds rather for Mount, or 50 million pounds for James Maddison, when we've got a Hale End Academy grad that has shown that he is able to do all of the things that you're telling me that Mason Mount is excellent at, bar maybe a couple pressing issues. And there's slight differences between these players, but generally, does Emile Smith-Rowe have that ability? Of course he does. He's shown it. But does he have the mental capability? Are you asking me, does Mikel trust him? Evidently not. We've seen it this season. I mean, the fact that he's been refuted in so many periods, you can't say that Mikel trusts him as much as he did. The issue I've got is he trusted him in his period of worst need, let's say, to get him out of the mud. So I don't see him seeing Emile Smith-Rowe as a player he can't get to. It is a very icky situation. But then how do we solve this? It really kind of depends on Emile Smith-Rowe for me, where I feel if he's not offering the application and training, then you've got to hold your hands up. For as much talent as he has, it's time to move on, because I don't think that any player is warranted that behavior. But can I give up on the talent of Emile Smith-Rowe? And if we're talking footballing perspective only, is he not somebody that offers a unique skill set in this Arsenal squad? Of course, these are all very basic yeses. But again, potential is something that you maybe can't bank on all the time, and you do have to make difficult choices. I just feel as though that why would you cut important, unique profiles first as opposed to weeds in your squad? Sambi Lakunga, Mohamed El-Neni, Jorginho. These are all players in the squad that don't have a long-term future. Like, if you don't believe that Emile Smith-Rowe is going to be the absolute superstar talent, no problem. But why not develop, and why sell at the lowest point, even if you believe that it's an unrepairable project? It makes no sense to me. Agreed. So, yeah, I can't see a footballing reason why we would let Emile Smith-Rowe, but I could see a character reason.
Mm-hmm. What? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say the character thing. There's got to be something we don't know. He's played 226 minutes. That's 2.5 games of football.
Zero league starts as well. Zero.
There's got to be something we don't know.
It's crazy to think that a year ago, was it 10 league goals? And I had people say that his closest profile to him is Kaka. That's what I was. That's how crazy football is at times. He had everything at the time, and then football changes like that. But talking about profiles, I think one thing this Arsenal team might need, especially next year, is the final ball player. You look at Kevin De Bruyne, you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, maybe Bruno Fernandes. We've got Martin Odegaard, but I believe he doesn't access that as much. I think sometimes he's a bit hesitant, he's a bit passive, and we don't have that final ball utilised as much. Maybe because he's playing on the right-hand side, and when he's on the left-hand side, on his left foot, he whip balls in. But there is a profile that also did sign, which, specialised in that area, who hasn't been, I'd say, as successful in his first year, but I know that I'm still a massive fan of. I think George likes as well. Alex has got his own opinions on him. We are talking Fabio Vieira, signed from, I believe it was Porto, for £35 million. And look, I saw the burst at the start, the games in the Europa League, but we can't forget, no pre-season. So you didn't have that same base to build off, to start the season off in the rhythm that Arsenal playing at. Let's start off with Alex, actually, on Fabio Vieira, because I know you got stuff to say, so get off your chest.
Okay, thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.